Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Social Media News Live. I am so excited to be here with you guys today. It feels like old school week with my friend Mike Allton in here. We have done live video together. Gosh, is it 10 years when we started? It's been a while. It's probably even longer than that. But yeah, Mike is like my oldest friend online. We met way back, and this is for Google Plus. That's for Chris Stone for his drinking game that he plays every week. But yeah, Mike and I have known each other for a long time through many different contractors and jobs, and he is like the steady guy who I get to hang out with online, and we talk quite a bit. And we've got already some amazing people showing up watching over on YouTube. We got Gary Stockton saying, "Good morning from Huntington Beach, you lovely people." Hey, Gary, it is so good to see you every week. It is amazing. And we have the one and the only Dustin Stout. Oh, good night. How big is that? Yeah, from Magi. Talked about him a lot at Social Media Marketing World a week or so ago about his amazing tool, Magi, and use his stuff for example. But we're going to be talking all about AI today because Mike Allton has dove deep. That's what AI would say. Delved. He has delved into.
I have delved.
delved into a lot of this AI stuff, and I kind of come from it from the image side, and he is like doing all the other stuff about growing your business using processes and all sorts of things, which we're going to get into today. So if you have questions, make sure you drop them down below because we want to make sure to bring those up and make the show all about you. And before we get started, I want to share something with you guys. Like I mentioned, I was doing AI images. I was talking all about that at Social Media Marketing World, and I actually asked in my newsletter for people who are trying the new OpenAI image model, which screwed up my slides so bad at Social Media Marketing World. I had to do a ton of changes, but we talked about it in my newsletter. If you want to subscribe to that, it's jeffc.com/news. We have some great stuff every week. But some people, I asked for images, and they emailed them in, and let me show you some examples. So this is actually what I shared at Social Media Marketing World. Now with this new OpenAI, you're able to actually have consistent characters. And this is like the shirt that I actually wear on stage. It got me down to like the shoes I was wearing. And so I would just uploaded a picture of that and had it to actually start creating images of me. And I tell a story at the beginning, and I was able to actually illustrate it using these consistent characters with this new image model, which was amazing. It's a little slow. There's some downsides to it, but even this, I didn't tell it to put the pizza party sign in the background, but it did it, and it does a lot of things really, really cool. Text is one of them, and that's one of them, and then, you can actually zoom in and have some character stuff, and then I had Rich Graham. I said, Rich, send me some stuff in, and he sent me one. The Studio Ghibli thing is really, really popular. That's his profile photo that he created with the new image model, and also my pal Shannon Hernandez. This is his profile photo, and he shared these examples with me that he actually made social media posts. Shannon is a big-time DJ in Phoenix, and he was creating some social media posts, and it did a really great job. So this is kind of the cool stuff you can do. You can change the aspect ratio, which it has a hard time with, but he's able to make this for kind of a different format. But anyway, these are some really cool things you're able to do now with the new OpenAI, and I'd love for you guys to know if in the comments if you guys are using this, because I think, and Mike, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, I think there's a potential that it could kill Canva if it gets faster and easier to do, because you're able to actually have a conversation with it and have it change things. So I would be worried if I was Canva because of the ability to change graphics and styles and everything just by speaking to it in chat. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe long term. I'm definitely worried if I'm Shutterstock.
Oh yeah,
my stock photo. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine myself ever paying for stock photography ever again. Yeah. I also have to say, I'm really glad that the story you chose to tell was not the urinating out of a window story.
Oh, this was
so
worse.
We don't have to see that one illustrated.
So now I can illustrate all my stories, Mike. So you'll see it at CEX because I'm going to tell the same story. So anyway, enough about that. But I would love to let you guys, if you have images, I'd love for you to send them in to me. And by the way, make sure you guys subscribe to the newsletter at jeffc.com/news because we have a great time chatting inside that community. All right, so we are going to start because Mike is an amazing AI consultant, I guess you would call it,
Sure.
or enthusiast. I mean, everybody, it's so new. I think, like, you can't really say expert, but I mean, he's a consultant about it. But we're going to talk about all that today. So I'm going to go ahead and hit go on the podcast machine, and we will get started. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not. And this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and so much more. And have you ever wondered how AI could actually make your workday easier? Not just in theory, but like in real practical ways. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to use AI tools without getting overwhelmed or stuck in tech jargon. Or maybe you're curious how successful marketers are customizing AI to fit their own unique business needs. And well, if that sounds familiar or something that you want to do, well, you're going to love this episode because we're sitting down with my friend Mike Allton, a seasoned marketer and the mind behind the AI hat, who's breaking down exactly how to make AI work for you. From building your own AI assistants to crafting better prompts, Mike's bringing the strategies and examples you can start using right away. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Mike, it is so good to see you again, my friend.
Thanks so much for having me. This is always a pleasure. I think I've been on, 3-4 times now.
Yeah.
And always a blast.
So if you don't know Mike, like I do, he is an AI consultant and trainer. He's host of the AI Hat podcast, an international keynote speaker and author at the Social Media Hat, where he is tirelessly helping businesses and marketers get ahead of the AI revolution and apply advanced technologies to their roles. He's also the chief storyteller at Agorapulse, and he has spent over a decade in digital marketing, bringing an unparalleled level of experience and excitement to the fore, whether he's delivering a presentation or leading a workshop. In fact, my being on Mike's podcast got me underneath Stelzner's eye once again, and that's why I was able to go to Social Media Marketing World and present about AI images there. So, Mike, I have all of you to thank because of your amazing podcast. So thank you very much.
I'm used to that.
Yeah, that's right. All the famous people are on your podcast. That's what it is. So let's just jump right into it because really quick, though, somebody who is sponsoring our show that I need to make sure we mention is our friends over at Ecamm, ecamm.com/Jeff. Use code Jeff15 to save 15% on your purchase of Ecamm. But AI business growth with Mike here, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about is, some of these questions that people have about customizing AI, because that was kind of the whole title of this show, is how we can customize AI and not just have it be this cool little thing that will make a wrap or, some fun images, but actually help our business grow. So what does customizing AI mean for a beginner? Like, we hear about tailoring AI for your own needs, but a lot of people don't know where to start. So can you break down the idea of customizing an AI tool like ChatGPT, for example, to fit your business or brand needs?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to recognize just kind of what you implied. We aren't talking about ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. We're not talking about investing in an expensive custom solution. We're not talking about investing in thousands of dollars of paid consultancies having to come in and spend months building something just for you. And we've seen, large corporations do that, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about going into ChatGPT or going into Gemini and making sure that with each interaction with that particular tool, it already knows whatever you need it to know in order to do an even better job. Imagine treating ChatGPT or Gemini like an intern, where you have an onboarding phase.
Mm-hmm.
With an intern, it's going to be measured in weeks. With AI, it's going to be measured in like an hour or two. But during that onboarding phase, you're going to explain who you are, who your business is, who your target audience is, what your brand voice is like, what are the common repetitive tasks that just need to be done all the time. And so with ChatGPT and Gemini and some of the other models and solutions, you have a couple of different places where you can go to customize them. The first level is memory, where you go into the settings and you go into memory, and there's just a field there where you can put in basic information. I'm Mike Allton, the founder of the AI Hat, also working at Agorapulse. I'm the chief storyteller. I help businesses. Here's my website. Here's my social profiles. That kind of basic information, the kind of stuff that you might want the AI to know at the outset of every conversation. And when you are talking to the AI, You can also tell it actively, hey, remember this. And it will
Mhm.
also append it to the memory for you. You don't always have to do that, which means you might want to periodically go back in and check the memory and see what else it's added there that it's trying to remember, that maybe
Right.
sometimes you don't want it to remember those things.
Yeah.
But the second area, the kind of the deeper level, is what I call custom instructions. Now, these are called different things by the different models. ChatGPT calls them custom GPTs. Gemini calls them gems. Claude calls them projects. I use Magi a lot. You use Magi. You've talked about it on the show a lot. For
Mhm.
folks who don't know, Magi is a wrapper for all these other tools. And in Magi, you can create custom instructions called personas, which I love, because with a Magi persona, you can start one chat with a persona and have one of the LLMs selected. And then as your conversation evolves, you could switch gears and start talking to a different LLM in the same conversation. Whereas obviously today, if you start a conversation with ChatGPT, a
Right.
very high level strategic conversation about a marketing campaign, but then you get to the point where you actually want to create the marketing materials and you've been told that Claude's a better writer than ChatGPT. Well, now you've got to copy and paste all the pertinent information over to Claude and start over. You could
Mhm.
skip that with Magi. But
Right.
in all these cases, the custom instructions operate exactly the same. You name it something, and then you put in the text for the instructions. And that could be just specific step-by-step things that you want it to do when you start that conversation. It could be additional context. You could attach files. So you might have a custom instruction just for your brand voice. Or I'll share some details in a minute about how some very specific custom instructions can be set up for very specific tasks where you want to do the exact same thing over and over again, and that's the only purpose for that instruction.
That's very cool. And I wanted to, this is going to throw you probably a curveball a little bit, but I think it was yesterday or the day before, OpenAI just came out and said their memory and they didn't even, but they said it remembers everything, which that's a big deal. The problem that I have is a lot of us I know are the same way, and I know you probably do the same thing, Mike, is we don't just use ChatGPT for us, we use it for our clients as well. So what are your thoughts about this long-term memory thing? Because the first thing I thought was like, that's great, but I also don't want like the clients that I have to start using my voice on their stuff. And I know you can flip it on and off, but do you have any solutions or ideas for that actual problem?
Yeah, for those listening, if you're not really clear or maybe you hadn't heard this before, there's several different layers of memory within these systems. The first layer that we're all familiar with is within the individual chat. You start a chat with
Right.
ChatGPT, and you can go back to that same chat a week, a month later, and it's going to remember what you talked about previously to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all these chats have what's called a context window, which means the more lengthy the chat goes, there's going to hit a limit at some point where now it no longer remembers the stuff that you talked about all the way at the beginning of the conversation, and stuff will start to fall off. So that's a bit of a problem that they're trying to address. So the next level would be the actual memory setting that I mentioned a moment ago. Now, this next level, it came out with Gemini a couple of months ago. They
Mm-hmm.
started doing this, and now OpenAI has just released their version of the same thing, where it will, in theory, remember everything across all your conversations. I haven't tested it actively. I'm kind of more of a Gemini user than a
Right.
ChatGPT user. I suspect it's not going to literally remember every single thing, but maybe it has the ability to search them all on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but your point is really valid. For people who are using this professionally, particularly for clients or multiple businesses, or maybe like me, they've got multiple hats and they don't want to intermingle the things, that is going to require a technical solution of some kind, because we're not going to remember to toggle it on or toggle it off.
Right.
And if the solution really is that they just instantly search all the chats, then toggling it on and toggling it off isn't going to really matter.
Right.
The solution that I've seen that works the best is actually built into Magi already. They have workspaces. So each individual workspace can be devoted to an individual business or client. Like I work full-time for Agorapulse, so I have an Agorapulse workspace.
Right.
When I'm doing my Agorapulse podcast prep, for instance, which we could talk about as an assistant, that's in the Agorapulse workspace. I've got a different workspace for my personal stuff, right? So that those aren't intermingled at all.
Yeah, I know we have project folders that we use in ChatGPT a lot. And so I'm hoping, and like I said, this came out, I think yesterday,
Yeah.
that I'll be able to say, hey, don't use this folder because that's where all this is. We'll see. Dustin actually has a great point, and he, somebody who knows, he goes, memory is actually a slippery slope, less helpful than most things. Could talk at length about this from technical aspects to pragmatic aspects. So, but I know that's a concern, especially for a lot of marketers, and even I don't want to commingle stuff that I'm doing because I have a very specific voice that I use. I'm asking it business questions. I'm using it as like a business consultant or a copywriter, and some of that stuff is way different than what I want for my clients. But we have a lot of people who love Magi. Chris Stone says Magi they rule. Personas rule, and then can't speak, and then and Dustin takes offense to the term rapper. You called it the rap. Now, I will say this. I said this
Sorry,
from
Dustin,
this.
you should tell me what to say instead, because I've been using that term a long time.
So I even said from this stage at Social Media Market World, I said, I don't recommend anybody buy a lifetime or a year subscription to any AI platform except Magi, because it does what you said that you can go and test out all these different things, and he's always adding new APIs and stuff. So by the way, I had brought this up when you were talking, but if you want to find out more about Magi, magi.co /Jeff gets you there. All right. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'll get distracted because this is so fascinating to me. When we're talking about, matching a brand's style, a voice or style, because that's one of the things a lot of marketers or solopreneurs and everybody is like excited about. Like they can write my voice. So, but a worry for small businesses is that this AI generated content won't sound like them or reflect their brand personality. And I know you have done a lot of work with this. So can you talk about some practical ways to address that? Like how you can teach these AI assistants to adopt your tone? Is there certain instructions that you use? You mentioned custom GPTs. What are your favorite ways to do that, Mike?
Yeah, first and foremost, you absolutely have to have what your brand voice is documented, and it needs to be documented in a way that the AI can access that documentation. So that's either having a custom GPT or a gem or a persona that you can reference at the start of the conversation, because you want to create some content and you want it to sound like you, whether that's just a personal email or a marketing campaign, whatever the case is, you're going to want to make sure it sounds like you, or you have it in a PDF file that you can simply attach to that conversation, which is a great workaround for all of these. You don't always have to create a set of custom instructions for a task if you can attach the appropriate context to the conversation. So I have my personal voice documented as a PDF. I also have it as some custom instructions, but that means if I'm ever in any kind of conversation, if all of a sudden I need to shift gears and I don't have the ability for whatever reason to call that from a custom instruction, I just attach the file and say, okay, I want to write this, use the attached file to make sure it sounds witty, authoritative, casual, yet professional. All the things that kind of make up how I personally sound when I'm writing or I'm speaking. Now, if you don't have that, then you need to back up. Before you even get to the AI, you need to have that documented. Now, I will say, if you're a Magi user, Dustin's really helped you out here, because he has a persona called, I think it's just brand voice. Dustin can correct me in the chat. So you can just start a new chat inside of Magi and choose from the drop down of personas, the brand persona, and it will ask you questions and walk you through. But if you're not using Magi, and shame on you if you're not, but if you're not using Magi, the cool thing about AI today that is unlike every other technology we've ever had in the past is if you don't know what to do, you can just ask the AI, right? So you don't have to know how to create a brand voice document. You don't have to know how to create a target persona. You can just open a new chat in whatever LLM you're using today and say, hey, LLM, I'm so-and-so working for this brand, or me personally, and I want to create a brand voice document. Ask me questions, walk me through this, with the end goal of having a complete set of instructions for myself or for the LLM in the future. And in a nutshell, what it's going to do is it's going to ask you for, what is your brand, who are you working with, and most importantly, give us some examples. That's the best way to train the AI. I've been blessed. I've been a writer all my professional career, so I have literally thousands of documents. I have all kinds of great blog posts that it was easy for me to just pile in there. That might not be you. You might not have a lot of written content, so you might want to think kind of outside the box. What about emails, social media posts, particularly LinkedIn? Think about what you are hoping to accomplish through this? Is this going to be for professional communication, or you just want something that you can be able to write personal correspondence that sounds like you, and let that kind of guide you as to where you might be able to find some of those resources. But you're going to want to come up with, depending on length, I would say 5 to 10. Could be less if it's longer. Might need more if they're shorter pieces. Like if everything's 250 words or less, you're going to probably need 10 to 20 examples. But once you feed the AI all those examples, it will get a sense for how you prefer to communicate and talk to your target audience. And then it's going to summarize it for you so that you can read it and say, oh, yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, that's exactly how I sound. Because that's what most of you are going to find. You're going to be pleasantly surprised, I think, what the AI infers just by reading your emails or your blog posts. Oh, okay. Jeff always likes to insert some humor into everything he does. Jeff knows this. I'm not telling him anything he doesn't know, but there'll be some other aspects about it. Jeff's fairly colloquial in his talk. He uses short sentences, whatever. It'll pick up on all those observations. So you review that, and they say, "Fantastic, thank you. Summarize all this for me in a single blurb that I can then add to a PDF file and or a custom instruction." That's how you're going to wrap that up. And once you've got that, then particularly as a small business owner, this is what's super valuable. If you're a professional marketer and it's your job to write content, you probably don't really need this, frankly. But if you're a small business owner, that's not your job. You're doing it because you have to, in addition to juggling all of the other things that you have to juggle as the owner of a small business. And so being able to quickly turn to AI and say, look, I need a Facebook ad, or I need an email invitation to an event, whatever. And you just feed it the details and the context, then it's going to be able to give you that piece of content that's going to sound remarkably like you wrote it from the start. And that's where we start to see real time savings. One, the AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you. You're doing important things. Don't get me wrong. You're deciding what needs to be done. That's where the human's still in the loop. But the AI does the heavy lifting, and it does it with minimal revisions. That's where a lot of people, I think, got frustrated in the early days of ChatGPT, or even before ChatGPT. There were great tools like Jasper, but you'd say, hey, or conversion.ai at the time that I was using it, hey, write me something in the voice of Gary Vaynerchuk, and it wouldn't sound like me or Gary Vaynerchuk. So that wasn't good for anyone. But this will come out remarkably well if done well. If you do the brand voice documentation up front well, and you won't need to keep revising it.
So, Mike, I haven't asked you this, and this is something that came up when you were talking about it, because you, like you said, have been a writer for many years. In fact, that's kind of your skill set. That's kind of what you put your value behind, is like, I'm a good writer. And you use like history because you're a history buff, you'd weave that into your blog postings. And like I said, you've done it for a year. Did you struggle with AI? And because it's so easy now to plug stuff in and get content out. I mean, sometimes it's slop, but you know what I mean? Like, because a lot of bloggers were like, this was a big deal, and they kind of took offense. It's kind of like when Canva came out with the designers, got all in a huff. Did you have that initial, like, I don't want to use this, I'm a writer, this is cheating? I mean, how do you kind of navigate that as a blogger? And now you're this AI kind of specialist, so I'd love to know how you kind of put those things together in your mind.
My struggle wasn't that at all. My struggle has been that I recognized a decade ago, when we were on Google Plus together, that video was the most effective means of communication, despite the fact that I don't really enjoy creating video. I don't enjoy creating podcasts. I know it's more effective than written blog posts. And I've seen the decline of consumption of written blog posts over the past decade. I used to have a blog. I mean, technically it's still there, devoted to blogging and content marketing. I no longer publish to that site. I don't push that content at all because people don't want to do it anymore, because they frankly don't really have to unless you really enjoy it. So my issue wasn't so much the morality of using AI to create written content when I used to be a writer. My issue was simply the fact that I recognized I need to devote most of my time to creating video and audio content, and I just don't have the luxury to write as much as I used to write. And I have to be okay with that, because I have to go and create the kind of content in the kind of mediums and channels that my target audience wants to consume it.
Right.
So it's more about them than it is about me. So the good news for me is, yeah, I can lean on AI to help me create the slew of content that I'm creating between basically 2 jobs.
Right.
I have 5 podcasts. I'm doing customer interviews to create success stories. I am speaking on stages, appearing on podcasts, doing a weekly newsletter. I'm still a content machine.
Right.
Just most of it's video, and I'm able to weave AI in a bunch of different places to help me streamline those processes and create the bandwidth to do all that.
Yeah, and I think the key thing for that is you developed your storytelling skills through writing, and that doesn't go away. Like, you can now take those skills of storytelling and move it to, like you said, where your people are consuming that content. So that's what even with image creation, like, that's kind of my jam, is like how to use AI to create images. It's the same. How do you tell a story with images? That has not changed. Like, it's still the same way that we've always had to do that and use those mediums together. And so I love what you said about that. But it was fascinating because I knew that we used to joke that you were writing 2 blog posts with one in each hand on your keyboard, and like, because you were cranking out so much content. And it's been really fascinating to see your evolution, embracing AI, but using it as a storyteller and not so just much as a blogger anymore. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. There was the running joke, because it was during one of our Manly Pinterest tip shows.
Right.
I was taking notes while we were interviewing Gary Goldstein, the producer of Pretty Woman, and had a blog post go out like probably 10 minutes after we ended. I mean, it was discussing how fast that went in.
It was.
It was like, fast. How did you write that so fast?
Yeah, and that was before AI.
But
yeah,
that was definitely pre-AI.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, you're absolutely right. Like, I just gave a keynote here in St. Louis at the Business Expo earlier this week, and I'm using my love of history and my storytelling skills to wrap a couple of open loops. I started off by talking about my podcast situation, how I went from 1 show to 3 shows to 5 shows. And how sick that is, and how overwhelming it was until I learned how to use AI. And then I quickly transitioned to telling the story of Ada Lovelace, one of those historical stories that you mentioned about. She was eventually the inventor of the algorithm in the first computer program 2 centuries ago. And I weave that into the conversation about how is AI impacting business today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, and I think those skills don't go away. They can be enhanced, and you can reach more people now because of the things you're able to do with AI. So speaking of old school, people that we know from back in the day, Peg Fitzpatrick is saying, hey, it's Jeff and Mike. Yeah, Peg is here, so that's great. And Dustin is singing your praises, saying Mike is a great and highly detailed writer, and because of that, his AI output is phenomenal. It will only enhance those skills we already have. And he jokes, Mike is blogging right now is our favorite thing to say. Yeah, that's very, very true. So I want to really quick, as we're talking about customizing AI, I want to jump back to something you said about using those custom GPTs and some of the custom things in Gemini. And I want to make sure that people understand, because that sounds really intimidating. It sounds like you're getting in there and messing with the code and all this kind of stuff. Can you kind of talk about the ease of use when it comes to kind of customizing these AI models? You don't really need code. Like you mentioned, you can ask ChatGPT to help you like walk through the steps. So just kind of reassure people, I guess, when it comes to customization.
Yeah, there is no coding here whatsoever. We're not talking about building a custom WordPress install where you're going to go into the theme and the PHP file and the CSS file, which I can do, but that's not what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. We're simply manipulating the existing fields. So let's take Gemini, for instance, because I love Gemini. I'm in there every single day. I love being able to talk to Gemini and so on. So in Gemini, the custom instructions are called gems. And when you first open up Gemini, you're going to look in the lower left-hand corner and you're going to see a little field that says Gem Manager. And you're going to click there. And you're going to see any gems that you've already created, or if not, you won't see any, except I think they have some default ones, kind of like Magi does as well. Right. And you will simply click a button that says Create a New Gem. And just like all the other systems, they're all kind of copying each other, just like they all now have a deep research function. Yeah. They all have custom instructions, which is a good thing. That makes it very ubiquitous. You just put in a name, whatever you want, right? So whatever purpose you have in mind for this gem, put it in there. My go-to gem is what I call my AI chief of staff. It's an assistant that has been trained on everything it needs to know about me, my business, my challenges, my goals for the year. So I can fire up a conversation any time of day with my AI chief of staff. And it already has that context, right? It's like a work buddy that knows me really, really well. And I can lean over into the next cubicle and say, hey, Joe, what do you think about this? So you give it a name. And it could be like a real name too. Like my AI chief of staff is named Clue, but you could name these functionally whatever you want. And then there's simply a field for instructions. And if you worked with the AI in a chat to develop a custom gem or a custom GPT, then it's going to give you the output to just copy and paste into that field. If you're starting from scratch, then you can put in whatever you want. Now, here's a shortcut. Don't start from scratch. Right. ChatGPT has a store called the Custom GPT Store, the GPT Store, and that's where you can find all kinds of GPTs that you could adapt to yourself. My very first GPT was based on my friend Dan Sanchez. He created a tool called My Showrunner. It's at myshowrunner.com. It's for people who do podcasts and they wanted to streamline the podcast production. And that was the first time I'd really wrapped my head around what a custom set of instructions were. And he just lets you download it for free. And it's basically, you fill in the blanks, the details for your podcast and pop it in there. And it's a tool then to help you build your pre-show documentation and you run a show. That was the first time I'd ever tried to build a custom GPT. And it was remarkably easy. This really isn't hard, folks. You just need to know what it is that you want to do. And again, so if you're not sure what you want to do with it, go browse the GPT store and you'll see all kinds of examples, or do one of the things that we talked about today, build a GPT just for your voice, so that if you need something created, you can tap into it there. So that's the instructions field. And below that, in virtually every one of these, there will be a file attachment field. And this is where you could attach a file that might be additional context, additional information. Like for instance, maybe your brand already has brand guidelines set up. Maybe it's not exhaustive, but if you've got something, we'll start there and attach that and then add what other additional information you need in the instructions and then save it. And that's it. That's all the programming you've done. That's all the customizations you had to do. Because now every single time you start a new chat, you can just select that GPT or gem or persona in Magi, and you can have a conversation with the LLM, with the AI system, and it will know everything that you put in that instruction.
That's very cool. And you can go and you can change things easily too. Like if you can add more content, you can, I shouldn't have said that. That's throwing things off. I can go adjust that really easily in those GPTs. Or
easy. Absolutely. Yeah. That one showrunner that I first started with has now evolved to 5. I've got one for each podcast, one for each show that I'm running, because then each showrunner has the unique details of that show, like the name, right? The target audience. All my shows for Agorapulse are focused on very specific target personas like hospitality, social media managers. That's one of the podcasts. That's how niche it is, right? But they're all structured essentially the same. I have it work step by step through a process where I collaborate with it and ask me questions. I give it information. We go back and forth. And at the end, we get a document that we build together. That's a pre-show document that I share with each guest that has the description of the show, the topic, and the questions that I'm going to ask it. Now, over time, because now I've been using these things for almost a year now, I have evolved how I want them to act. Like the first, dozen times, I might have found myself going back and forth and asking it to redo certain sections over and over and over again, and finally realized, I should just go back in and edit the instructions to make it more clear from the start, rather than having to tell it that over and over again. But that was easy. I mean, once it dawns on me to do stuff like that, it's 5 minutes and it's done.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is people don't realize that it's okay to go in and change things. You can, copy it and move it. So, Chris Stone, I see your question. We're going to get to that in the next segment because that is very, very important. But I wanted to, you mentioned Dan Sanchez. I think it's the same Dan Sanchez that was at Social Media Marketing World. I think he works for Social Media Examiner now. He had a great, thing as well. And that GPT you were talking about, there's a great one that I always use for images that I want people to know about. I think it's Glibetry. It helps you. It gives you actually like 4 different images. If you have trouble like figuring out like, okay, I need to make a graphic for networking, and instead of that same old image of the overlay of people coming together, what I want something different. And so you go in there and you say that, it'll give you ideas for it. It'll actually give you Midjourney code if you want to use Midjourney to copy and paste over there. He's got one on making consistent characters. He's got one on for video prompts, text to video prompts for like Sora and some of those other ones. So, and it's all free. So go check those out. Those can save you a ton of time. And then you can take them and actually make them your own if you want to customize them a little bit later. So great stuff there. Mike, I want to have you put on your fortune teller hat. And I want you to kind of think in the next couple years, I won't even say 5 years, just the next couple years. How do you see the evolution of AI customization coming for small and medium-sized businesses? What are the things that you really would like, and where do you think like practically it's going to go?
Well, where we're at the cusp of right now in terms of this overarching AI revolution, like Jeff mentioned, I'm a historian, so I've studied the industrial revolutions. We are currently in the 4th industrial revolution. If you're not familiar with it, it's not just new tech for marketing. It's going to be a shift across the entire society, which is going to impact jobs, is going to impact how we do things. And where we're at right now with this AI revolution is what a lot of people refer to as the agentic era. It's where the AI systems are now progressed where they have some limited capacity for independent and autonomous action. Probably you guys have seen some of the demos of like ChatGPT's Operator. Mm-hmm. There's some other systems out there where you can say, hey, I want a reservation at a restaurant downtown tonight. It's got to be, outdoor seating, anything but Italian, whatever. Right. And it'll go in and it'll try to do that for you. And it'll surf a bunch of different websites to surface the restaurants that fit that criteria. And it'll start to ping to see which ones have open tables for this evening, which is nice. In theory. I haven't seen a lot of examples yet where it's truly saving me like a ton of time. But that's because we're just at the cusp. Right. And that's what's going to happen over the next couple of years. These systems are going to evolve to the point where you can have a natural language conversation about what you want to accomplish. And it's going to be far more important than a dinner reservation. It's going to be, for a personal consumer use, I want an entire vacation mapped out, where we're going to stay, where we're going to go. Here's who's coming, how long we're going to be there, how we're going to get there, plane ticket reservations, all the things. And it'll be given to you just like a travel agent might. In business, it's going to be things like, I want an entire marketing campaign mapped out for Q4 around this theme, right, promoting this product, these kinds of things. And it will be able to go and do the research, find what the competition is doing, what the market looks like, all kinds of other benchmarks that might need to be brought in that would take somebody hours probably to do, and use that to feed the strategy. I'm doing this today by using Gemini Deep Research for the initial research on whatever it is, and then pulling that data into a new conversation with my AI chief of staff and saying, okay, I did a deep dive. This is what, St. Louis businesses are struggling with, as an example of a recent research. And this is what my competition is like in St. Louis. Again, another example of recent research. How do we help them? And how do we differentiate ourselves from the research? And these are, 20, 30-page PDF reports that it's able to ingest in seconds now that I have it, and help me collaborate on a strategy. As we move forward in the next year or two, the capability of these AI agents will be that they'll be able to, first of all, do all these things without having to go back and forth to different chats. They'll be able to do them more autonomously and think through, okay, at each step of the way, is this really what Jeff wanted? Is this helping Jeff and his business? Is this aligned with all of our other goals and information? And that's just the first step. The next step will be when these agents are able to actually communicate with each other. You will someday, and by someday I mean like within the next couple of years, have an AI agent that's responsible for your paid advertising, and a different AI agent that's responsible for your content perhaps, and then a marketing agent that you're able to communicate with to collaborate with all those. So if you're kind of feeling like you're talking about an AI workforce, that's exactly what's happening. That's where we're moving. And this isn't just me saying this. If you pay attention to what the folks at Google DeepMind, the people who are behind Gemini, or Sam Altman and the folks at OpenAI,
Mm-hmm.
they have mapped out their various levels of AI intelligence. And this is exactly what they're moving towards, is AI that's smart enough to do a lot of these things autonomously, and eventually smart enough to play the role of entire organizations or departments
Right.
semi-autonomously or fully autonomously. And it's incumbent upon us, I think, as marketers and more importantly, business leaders, to recognize that's the direction we're going with this technology. You will
Mm-hmm.
soon be able to hire an AI agent for $5, $10, $20,000 a month, who's going to do the role of what would have been multiple people,
Right.
and do it
They can work all the
autonomously
time.
and
All the time. Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's interesting because I was thinking about, the biggest hurdle now, even for like those places where they'll go and like book tickets for your, what venue or a restaurant, whatever, you've got to hand over your credit card. And there's still this like, I'm giving my, but we do this already, like with Meta Facebook ads. We already give it its card and it's using the AI to try to figure the best thing out. It's just where that money transfer is going to happen. Is it going to be like at the
Apple
beginning?
knows my credit card
Right,
information. It's
exactly.
in the Apple Wallet.
Right.
Google Wallet
Yeah.
knows my credit card information. Yeah, so it's just going to be a mind shift
Mm-hmm.
in our perception of what these machines can and can't do. But eventually, as humans, we'll all have, I think, a personal AI assistant that, quite frankly, within 5 years will probably be an actual physical assistant, a robotic being of some kind that has access to all this and can, be that assistant that can actually do the stuff that we want it to do. And then that truly saves us time.
So Gary has a great point. He goes, then we'll have to figure out how to make money if we're not AI savvy. And here's the thing that I was thinking about actually this week after Social Media Marketing World, processing everything. My job, like I do a lot of video editing, a lot of podcast editing. I think that will be gone in 5 years. I don't think you'll need to hire an editor. Now you may have somebody supervising it and stuff, but already, like if I could use AI agents to just throw it at a podcast and get it done, and it already can pick out the best clips for me. It can do all sorts of some stuff right now, but that it could take, and we're not that far off for it to do all that stuff for me, and I could just review it or whatever. We all have to start thinking about what our jobs are going to look like because of this stuff coming. I mean, it's a little bit scary, but we can also think of like, we can be so creative now. We have so many cool tools now that we're able to, like, if I didn't have to edit anymore, what could I do with that time instead? Like, I'm excited about it. Now, I understand this freaks a lot of people out if they're building up a business or, copywriting or that kind of stuff. I mean, it's scary. As a blogger, like, if you didn't have this mindset, this could be potentially, like, crippling for you. But I think we need to think of it as a way, as an opportunity. And also, we can't really put it back in the bag. Like, we're going to have to deal with it. We can whine about it, we can gripe about it, but we're going to have to deal with it. So very, very interesting. And I knew Chris was going to come back with this. He says, I disagree, because I knew he was going to do that. I do agree. So Cass, let's bring this up, Mike, and we'll talk about it. He goes, disagree, Jeff. When Canva was launched, everyone said graphic designers will be eliminated. That is not the case. So I agree to you with a point, Chris. Here's the thing that I like to think of. We used to have blacksmiths on every corner because we all had horses. We still have blacksmiths. I mean, we used to have horses, and we had a farrier come out. We don't have as many blacksmiths. They're not on every corner anymore. They're still there. So I think that's what's going to happen with editors, graphic designers. I think to a point has already happened. What are your thoughts, Mike? Am I off or not?
No, I do think there's a distinction between the role and the tool. Yeah. Right. You and I are thinking about individual people and their roles and their work and their future. Canva is a very specific tool. And I have to say, from a historical perspective, there is not a tool today that will last forever.
Right.
No, it's not possible. So every tool's days are numbered. Canva's days are numbered. Now, are they numbered to this point where we won't need them in 12 months? No, absolutely not. Within 5 years, will Canva be what it is today? That depends on Canva. Will they shift like Netflix? I think the answer is a resounding yes, because we're seeing that today. If we look at the Canva feature launches, they just had their big event. They do one every single year. They're weaving more and more AI into their tool. And I think within 5 years, they will have evolved beyond pure design, creation, and editing, because they will see the same thing that you're seeing, Jeff, is that, the basic AI tools are replacing a lot of their basic functionality. And we've seen this with technological advancement time and time again, going back to the human part of it. When ATMs were introduced, many people predicted the end of bank tellers. We did see fewer bank tellers per branch, but what we also saw was more branches and more tellers overall,
Right.
because their roles evolved from basic counting cash to more advanced financial transactions. So over the all thing, we're not talking about job elimination, it's job evolution into something newer, bigger, and better.
Yeah. I knew this was going to bring up good stuff in the comments. So Gary says over on YouTube, he says, ChatGPT gave wrong or misleading answers to 35% of financial questions in a new test according to Entrepreneur. Don't rely on it completely. And then he goes, legal, financial, and medical are all dangerous fields to rely on it. At this present time, I would say yes. And there's a great, I can't remember the article, it's like why AI can't do math very well because of the generative thing. There's this whole science behind it. But it was the same reason recently that, AI couldn't generate a full wine glass to the brim. Like it was impossible, because if you look at all the images out there it was trained on, that's always a half glass of wine. Now with the new OpenAI, you can do it full to the brim or to the bottom, because it's using different kind of math and algorithms to do that. So I think eventually, accountants, like QuickBooks is already starting to roll out AI stuff. They've been doing it for a while. I would love to be able to do that for accounting, but I think we are going to have to be careful. But I think things are going to evolve, and we're going to have to roll with the punches and see. But I think it's an opportunity instead of a thing to get stressed out about. But anyway, this isn't a production show. But go ahead.
Well, that's right. Let me weigh in real quick, though, on what Gary said, because I want to share a word of caution for every single person watching and listening. Don't let statistics like what Gary shared, and this isn't a diss on Gary at all, because I've seen other kinds of performance benchmarks and metrics in the past, but do not let that lull you into some kind of false sense of security. Oh, AI can never replace me because it can't do X, Y, or Z today. You're going to be really disappointed in 12 months and in 16 months when all of a sudden AI can actually do that 10 times better than it can today, because that's the rate of progress that we're seeing. The models over the past 12 months have all become reasoning or thinking models, which means they take the time to think through things. So now they can actually start to do complex mathematics, and they can start to do calculations, and they'll start to be able to do financials. Right. And honestly, 12 months from now, I would expect that 35% to be almost no errors whatsoever. They're going to be correct 99.99% of the time. Don't let that lull you into false insecurity.
Yeah. And I love my audience. I love you guys who show up every week. It's so much fun. And Gary says, if I'm pouring it for the wife, we're talking about the wine glass, it's to the brim. Preach, brother. And this is a good point by Chris. He goes, I think doing video and podcast editing is a job you will lose if you don't understand how to use all this stuff to set yourself apart from what everyone else is doing. That is true, I think, across industries. And even Mike, he's using his skills, like we talked about, his storytelling skills that he has crafted throughout all his writing career, and it's not thrown them away. They're still super applicable to whatever he's doing, because he knows how to craft a story and weave things in it and teach AI how to do that a little bit quicker. So I think I think we're not disagreeing on everything, Chris. I think things are going to change rapidly, faster than we can comprehend. But I also think the way to tell a story, whether it's podcasting, video editing, whatever, is still going to be a skill that people will pay to do, because the creativity is hard to scale in a lot of times. And so I think your point is valid. So anyway, back to an earlier question that Chris had that I really wanted to bring up, because it goes right into the next part of our show. He goes, Mike, are you using AI agents, and what are some practical ways for creators to lean into a gentle AI? And we had this conversation before the show that we need to classify the difference between AI assistants and agents. So can you kind of walk us through that? Because I think it is very confusing when people name it different, like operator is, like you mentioned, for ChatGPT. Yeah. So can you talk about the difference between AI assistants and AI agents?
And the first thing I'll say is confusion is normal in AI today, because there are a lot of terms that are used interchangeably, and there's no, world book of standards this is what this means. Nobody agrees on what artificial general intelligence, or AGI, truly means or looks like. There's just a bunch of kind of similar definitions floating out there. AI agents are very similar, particularly, honestly, once the marketers get their hands into these things, they'll call anything an AI agent if they think it will sell them more subscriptions to their tool. So it behooves us to be a little bit careful there. So when I talk about AI assistants, I'm talking about custom instructions. I'm talking about versions of the large language models that have been set up by us to perform specific tasks, whether it's just that one thing that you have to do every day, analyze a report and give you a summary that you can email to the team. That's an AI assistant. Or, to much more broader, looser things like my AI chief of staff, who's obviously an AI assistant for me, but not built specific for any individual task. Those are AI assistants to me. Now, AI agents is something very different. That's what we were touching on a moment ago, where they are AI systems that are deliberately programmed by the manufacturer, whether it's the LLM or a SaaS solution like Salesforce, where the AI system can operate at least somewhat independently and autonomously and completing multi-step tasks. So I think that's a crucial point, that multi-step task. This isn't just sending something via Zapier to ChatGPT and then having it translate it. That to me wouldn't be an AI agent. It's cool. That might be really useful. I use these systems to translate almost every day at Agorapulse because we're a global company and I'm doing interviews 100% in English, but we want those same interviews to go out in French and German and Spanish. So we're using AI, which is really good at translating today. But an AI agent is something that's going to be able to think through a process, perform multiple steps, and then come back to you with the results or when it stops. So to answer Chris's question, deep research is my favorite AI agent application today. And here's why it's an AI agent. I go into deep research and I'm using, again, Gemini consistently for this, because with Gemini, I'm already paying $20 a month to Google. I was already paying for the extra storage. And then I realized last year, I just needed to switch the subscription to Google One. And now I have complete paid access to all of their professional AI tools for the same cost. And I like it over deep research from ChatGPT because there you're limited to 10 searches a month, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen some people report, better results, which is cool. But if it's only 10 and I want to use this every day, that's a problem. So with Gemini Deep Research, I type in very natural language, I want to know more about this topic. I want to research this. And whether it's a personal research topic, or something for a marketing campaign, or something on behalf of a client. Like maybe I need to research, market trends in St. Louis and come up with 3 customer retention strategies for small retail shops. That's really specific. And I might spend, hours poring over blog posts and studies and case studies and so on to surface something, which all I want at the end is to be able to give my client good advice. I'm not necessarily paid by the hour. So me being able to substitute a tool to do all that research for me is extremely handy. So I tell it what I want. And the tool comes back and says, okay, I understand, Mike, that this is what you want to research. Here's my research plan. And you get to look at it and say, yeah, that looks pretty good. What I really love is that these things are so smart. They often insert ideas into the research plan that you didn't suggest. I was actually on a call with a client, and he's in the event sector. And the call was mostly about AI, but one of the things that he talked about in the call was that he wanted to kind of raise his awareness in the event industry. And I said, well, you need to start showing up on podcasts. It's a really smart approach to raising your awareness. And I said, you could use deep research to research all the podcasts in the event space and who the podcast owner and contact might be. And so while we were on the call, I put that in there. I want to know all the events, all the podcasts in the event space, what's the name of the podcast and who's the host of the podcast, and like a website if they have it. And in the research plan, Gemini said, you know what else would be really cool? If you knew what their requirements for a guest were, or if they even accept guests. I'm like, oh, that's smart. Yeah, because if you're doing podcast outreach, first of all, don't embarrass yourself by reaching out to a podcast that never does guests, because
Right.
That doesn't look
Looks stupid.
You obviously never listened to it.
Right.
And secondly, you know, if they've got published requirements for their guests, well, why not pull that into the report? And so then again, it's agentic, meaning once you say yes to this research, it will independently go out and look at 10, 20, 100 different websites, scan them all, pull that information all together, and then publish it as an entire report right there on your screen. And you can download it as a PDF. You can now have a conversation back and forth with it. You can say, oh, okay, that's cool. What about this podcast? How often have they published, or whatever questions you might want? Or maybe it surfaces another angle that you didn't think of before and you wanted to do some additional research. You can have it do that. And with Gemini, you can either download as a PDF, or what I usually do is push it to a Google Drive folder. And now it's a Google Doc that I can share with the client, or, you know, if it's for personal use, reference that in other chats.
That's really cool. And because of the thing I did last week at Social Media Marketing World, using the new, because it just had like broken 3 days before that this new model came out, I had to upgrade to the $200 a month ChatGPT plan because I needed to get slides done. But one of the cool things is it gives me access to the deep research, their new model, and I can do some really cool stuff inside of there. And I wanted to use it because this month I had to buy anyway. But I used it actually for this show with Mike, and I actually showed him the results because I thought it was really, really cool, because I know he nerds out about this stuff too. But what it did is it walked me through, actually, when it was trying to get information from his website, it would actually show me like, oh, this is blocked. And I wanted to send it to Mike because I know that he's big into SEO and, you know, matters what things are being crawled and Googled. But it would walk me through that in that kind of those steps that we talked about for agents. And it was really fascinating to watch it. And it took like 20 minutes. Now, it asked me beforehand clarifying questions of what I wanted to do with this research, which was very, very helpful. Another thing that I've done that I usually do for my shows, and this is a really practical example, I've had guests like that have been on Chris Stone and Jim Few's show. Like, they've been on the show. I love their show. It's great stuff. We have some crossover audience. But I want to ask my guests questions that haven't been asked before. And what I'm able to do is use these agents to go in and research. I'll say, go look at all the YouTubes that they've been on, you know, because I can read the transcripts. And I say, this is what I want to talk about in my show. I don't want to ask a question that's already been asked a bunch of times before. I want it to be just for my show. And it does that. And I've had numerous guests say, you know, no one's ever asked me that before, which as an interviewer, that's what you want, right? So being able to do that, which it'd be impossible for me to do amount of time to do that kind of research, I can do now to make my show better. And I think that's really, really cool as creators that we have these tools that we can become better interviewers. So I just wanted to share that because I thought that was a lot of fun. So
I think it really illustrates too just how rapidly these systems are evolving, because almost a year ago to the day, I interviewed Chris Penn for my podcast. Yeah. He was one of the first episodes that dropped out. And this is how intimidating and nerdy it is to talk to Chris Penn, because in the conversation, we were talking about podcast interviewing. And this is obviously before any kind of deep research agent was out, right? This was a year ago. It's April 2024. And he made me let him share his screen so he could put me to shame, because he's like, yeah, you don't ever want to ask somebody who's been on lots of shows, you know, the same question. So what I do is go to YouTube and download the transcripts from all their shows and write this custom Python script that pulls them all in the text transcripts. And then I feed that into ChatGPT and I have it analyze it. Make sure I don't ask these questions again. So there were a lot of programming steps that even though he demoed it like this on the podcast interview, I'm still like flabbergasted. It didn't really comprehend to me how you would actually do this, because it's just second nature to him. Don't need to do that today. No, just ask deep research to do it.
And I remember trying to actually get a full hour transcript inside of ChatGPT to analyze, and I had to do all these workarounds where you would split. Remember, we have to split up the things and then combine it back in, and hey, don't forget this part. And now, I mean, that wasn't that long ago. So anyway, to our points that this stuff moves fast. It moves fast, and it's almost mind-boggling to think what it's going to be like in 6 months, like what we'll be able to do. So very, very cool. Justin says, just drop a link to Magi, a YouTube link into Magi, and you're done. So he's always, so if you guys don't know and haven't tried out Magi, go to magi.co/Jeff. He's amazing. And another shout out to our folks at Ecamm, because we are at the end of the show, because we've nerded out so much about this. We got to do a part 2 with Mike, because we didn't even get to the last section. But ecamm.com/Jeff. We appreciate them for sponsoring the show. And Mike, I want to let you have the floor, because you have so many great resources on your website and everything. So tell people where they can find out more about you, what you got going on. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thank you. So if you want to connect with me, just go to the aihat.com/connect. You'll find all my social channels there, all my podcasts and that sort of thing. So whatever it is that you're hoping to gain, whether you want to connect with me on a particular social channel, or reach out because you might want me to help your business level up your use of AI, that's the way to do it. Now, I mentioned that AI Chief of Staff as essentially a work buddy for me. I actually documented how to create your own AI work buddy. I initially thought it was going to be a prompt, and then the prompt got so long, I thought, no, I'm going to put all the details in a PDF file, and now the prompt is just one paragraph. So you download the PDF file for free at theaihat.com/AI work buddy, all one word. And you're going to take that paragraph prompt that I give you and attach the PDF file, and it's basically going to have your LLM of choice ask you questions to learn about you. And once it gets through asking all the questions, it's going to give you the entire set of instructions that you can then copy and paste into your new custom instruction, and boom, you'll have your own personalized AI work buddy that knows your role, your responsibilities, your challenges, your goals, even your communication style and preferences, and you'll be able to turn to them anytime you want to for free.
See, there's a reason I've been friends with Mike Allton for such a long time, is because he is super smart. He is on the cutting edge of all things creative when it comes to social media, marketing, AI stuff now, which flowed perfectly into Mike's skill set. So make sure you guys check him out, because Mike has been around for a while, and there's a reason. There's a reason why folks like Mike have been around and continue to add value to their audience. And with that, thank you guys so much for today. Sorry we nerded out a little bit, didn't get to the final section, but I'm sure we'll have Mike back on. Thank you for Peg, Rich Graham, Dustin Stout, Chris Stone, everybody, Gary Stockton, of course, everybody who stopped by in the chat and gave us great questions, great thoughts. We appreciate you. Wouldn't be able to do the show without you. Wouldn't be able to do the show without our friends at Ecamm, so make sure you guys go to ecamm.com/Jeff. And with that, we'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.